Salesforce Ohana, Walters954 here. Thank you all so much for joining me. I'm going to be continuing the COVID-19 states series, whatever you want to call it. And we have moved along pretty swimmingly with this one. So we've moved from using an API to grab the COVID-19 data to putting it in a, oh, we got a little sound in here. Okay. Grabbing the COVID-19 data, putting it inside of Salesforce, and now we visualized it in some charts, and now let's visualize it on a map. So this is what the current map looks like. And if you want, we're going to change this into something that looks like this. We're going to be following this tutorial for Leafletjs. We're going to be making something like this, but use all of the data that we have inside Salesforce. So if you're new here, do check out the other videos in the playlist if you want to replicate this inside of your org. And then make sure, it really means a lot to me, make sure to hit the like button if you like this video, subscribe. It lets me know that you all like this content and I will continue to make it. So that's where that is at. So it has been a little bit since we last worked on this, just because I was figuring out some stuff with the code. I needed to actually figure out some pieces behind it before taking it here, because I didn't want to get super stuck. But now I think we are ready. So where do we start with this? We have, if you remember where we left off, let me bring up that, I think, is it this one or is it this one? There we go. Yeah, it's this one. If you remember where we left off, we have actually created our Lightning Web component. We can display it on our page. We have a little bit of CSS going on here just to, set up the different page for it. Now we need to do a couple things like pulling in some data, or I think that's mainly it, is like pulling in the data. And I think do we have the states JSON in here? We do not. It is just this map. So we've got a little bit of work today. I think I may be able to get through all of it, just because I know how to do it all now. I think that's where that's gonna go. Okay, so then let's get started. So the first thing I want to do is start to move this into a better place to work. So this will just, I'll put it in a new tab. Now it's not, the page doesn't reload as fast, even though we're seeing the load times here, but there's other stuff that's going on in the page that may slow it down. So what I want to do is create a brand new page to kind of house our heat map so that we can work on it exclusively. So what I'm going to do is go into the setup, build a new Lightning as an app page, the app builder. And then let's hit new. Here we go. And we're going to call this an app page. So record page if we wanted to add records, home page, we don't care about that. We already have one. So let's do a new app page, and let's call this COVID. I think it's all caps, I can't remember now. Heat map. I think heat map's one word too. I'm messing that one up, but I never said that I could spell or knew anything about grammar. Cool, so now we have our solo page here, and what we want to do when this loads in is take our heat map, I think it's called heat map stream, or it might be the regular heat map, and put it on our page, because then it will be the only page that we are working on. Here we go. Got a bunch of stuff here. You can see all my test heat maps there. I think this is it. Let's look at this app page just to make sure. Oh, we can't see it because it's behind there. Let's stick with this one for now. If we have to change it, then we will change it. Save that. Activate. Page settings. Save for all users. Experience. That's fine. And then we're going to add it to this page. I think that's it. Save. Now we should be able to refresh here. And we are now seeing our new heat map app here. So that is great. We can now move this around. Perfect. you know, and it's on its own page. We don't have to worry about the dashboard crowding it or anything like that. We can always put it back when we, you know, when we do it, but at least for testing, and let's say we want to see it on the wide screen, we're going to put it here. So as I follow along in the tutorial, and just like I said, this is all in Leaf. It will check down in the description, it'll be there, but this is the Leafletjs, this tutorial that I'm following through here. We're just converting it to be able to be used inside of Salesforce. So there's a couple things that we need to get from this tutorial. One is this usstates.json. Let me back out of that. And I might be able to right click and save as. And I'm going to put this in my downloads for right now, but I'm going to actually navigate and move that to a specific folder in a second here. Or actually I'll do it right now. And really what this JSON is doing, really what this JSON is, and I'll show you it. It is a combination, let's move this over. It is a combination of drawings or outlines, and it's called geometry. It's a combination of geometry of what the actual states are outlined as. So when we start to look at the United States inside of the map, what we want to do is outline them and show them in a very specific way so that you know, we can see all of the different states properly. So what I did was I moved that download into this into my static resources here, into the actual file location, and we can see that it updated in my editor as well. We're having it over here. And then what I want to do is, well, now that we can kind of see what it all is, it's really just a huge JSON variable that you know, of just different information. So what I'm going to do is kind of convert this into an actual JSON object. So instead of being JavaScript, I'm going to close it out like that, and then I'm also going to save that for a second there, and then I'm going to change the file type. Can I rename it in here? Rename JSON. And what I'm actually going to do is upload this to Salesforce as a static resource, because you never want to put such a huge file, like look how big this file is. You never want to put a huge file like this inside of your JavaScript, especially since this is going to be static and all we're doing is really just reading off these values. You never want to put those inside of Salesforce itself, because you'll get performance issues in trying to read that stuff. So let's go ahead and rename this again, and I'm just going to call this state data.json. And eventually what we're going to do is read that information in here inside of our heat map so that we can draw all of our outlines of our different areas. So we have our state data JSON, which is pretty huge. But what we can see in here is some key things, like we have the name, which is Alabama, the density, which is, when we talk about the original data set, the density is I think the population density or something like that. And this is the original data set. Ideally, what we would do is come in here and update maybe the density or call it something else. And we would say, this is for the number of positive cases or the number of deaths. And, it's 500,000, something like that. But we're actually going to do that programmatically. What we really care about is these codes in here, which is actually the outline of the different states. I'm pretty sure those are like the lat longs or whatever, but it's drawing the outline of the states, and we'll see that in a second. Cool. So what I'm showing here is basically how to upload a static resource from your developer or from Visual Studio Code using an SFDX instead of, we could do this by going into the actual static resources, uploading the file and doing all that good stuff, but we can actually do it in here just by setting up our files correctly. So whenever you're doing any type of like metadata upload, we also need to create a XML file that holds the metadata on the data. So I guess whenever we're uploading a data file. So I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this state data. I think it's resource.meta or -meta.xml. And that is an XML file, and I have the copy of this somewhere. Here it is. And basically what this is going to be is like the actual setup of, you know, the description of the file. So instead of state data 2, we're going to call this state data for the stream, and just a bunch of the, you know, your cache control and all of the different metadata that goes into making the XML upload itself. And then for the actual JSON file, we need to change the file format one more time. I changed it to JSON just so that you guys could see that it is a JSON file, but we need to change it one more time just to make it a resource. And the resources are what are required when we're doing uploads, you know, into Salesforce. The key reason, or the key point that I wanted to make changing it into JSON first, is that inside of Visual Studio Code, especially when we look down here, we can select, you know, different file types to have the code editor see this as. And since we changed it to JSON first, it's now in like JSON coloring. We can do really snazzy things like the formatting and stuff like that. So it just helps out in letting us understand, like, hey, this is a JSON. At the end of the day, even though it's a dot resource, this is a JSON file. All we're doing is uploading it, and then we're going to use it. I had to clear my throat there. Okay, now that we have our static resource, oh, excuse me again. Okay, we might be ready now. Now that we have our static resource set up, we need to upload it. So really, that's as simple as right-clicking and deploying this source to org. We should have everything set up properly so that it will just take it, and then let's see, what did we do here? So we have the state data as an XML. Oh, you know what it is? This is not a zip. I was taking it from the other one. This is a JSON file. So let's save this. And just the application type, depending on what you're uploading, dictates what the content type is going to be. So I'm going to save that and deploy it again. And that deployed successfully. So let's just double check that it's actually working. We can back out of this. And what we should see if we go to our static resources is that, well, there's a bunch of state data from all the tests that I was doing, but this is the one from the state data stream, or the stream that we're talking about now, and it was uploaded today, which is the correct one that we want to use. So that is cool, and that is the first step in outlining this basic map that we're working with here. The next thing we need to do is actually start to see, you know, move away from having these polygons and being centered around London to being centered around the US, because that's what I'm doing all of this on. There may be other data sets that do outlines for other countries, but I'm doing the US because I live in the US. So now what we need to do is start to load in our new tile, you know, because when we're looking at the, here we go. When we're looking at, well, let's close these out too. We'll come back to those in a second. When we're looking at our tile, you know, we've picked a very specific one, but for what we want to do, and at least for the tutorial that I was following, we need to change our tile to be a specific one that we can do, you know, really easy outlines of. So I'm actually going to take away all of these markers because I don't need them anymore. They're a good example. And then I'm going to start to add in the new tile that we need access to. So I'm going to copy this from the tutorial, paste this in here, and we can see like, hey, this, this changed. I think maybe only this changed. Yeah, this is version 11. This is light version 9. And then I have my access token in there as well. Some other things that we can also change with this is probably to, I think they have it on here. We're going to set the view to be something centered around the US. So I'm going to copy that from the tutorial, paste that in, and then let's deploy this and see what we get. So hopefully that went through. I didn't actually sit around and wait for it. All right, so as you saw there, I didn't, before it was centered around London. Now it goes directly to the US, zoomed in about here. And our actual map has changed itself. We have, it's now this lighter background map instead of the one that was, pretty colorful. And we may be able to do it on the colorful one too, but this is the one we're using. Cool, so let's go back in here and continuing to go through this, we need to, what do we need to do now? I think we need to grab our state data. This is where the state data comes in. Because when we look at the tutorial, they want us to do something like this. Getting our state data from somewhere and adding it to our map, but it's not as easy for us since we are in Salesforce. That JSON and that JavaScript was huge, so we actually need to load that in first so we can get the outlines going. So to do that, let's take this away, and we need to basically read the information from our what's it called? From our JSON. Did I call it JavaScript before? From our JSON. So there's a couple things we need to do to get that set up. First, we need to import the data from our JSON data, from our static resources. So we've loaded static resources before. Let's actually put it next to this one because they're similar. Let's do an import. Let's call this JSON data from, and we can see kind of the outline here. Let's say even if you want to copy it. And instead of going to Leafletjs, we're just going to do state data. I think that's all we called it when we input it. Yeah, state data here. And I'll close this out so we can see this a little bit better. Cool. After that, now that we have the data loaded in, let's say like its raw form, we need to start to kind of massage the data. I would say kind of request it so that we can do some manipulation on it. So in this case, we are going to use a, I guess it's kind of like an HTTPS request, just so that we can format the data correctly as JSON. We're basically converting it, assuming, are we assuming? We're converting it in as like it is coming from like out of the system into this JavaScript as a get method. I haven't really found a better way of doing this, but please either in the comments down below or let me know on LinkedIn how else you would start to process the data here. This is what I got to work. So we're doing a request, we're opening some JSON, we're technically calling it a get, and then we will also, what else will we do? I think that's it. We need to set, just like in the tutorial, now that we have the JSON data, we need to set it to our map. So that's something like l.geojson state. Is it states data or state data? State data? Well, ours is called JSON data, so it doesn't matter. And then we need to add that to our map. And then our map is called my map. Cool. So I'm going to deploy this. And I think we actually have to send our request, but let's see. Because even though we're opening, we may need to request dot send, put nothing in there so that the values actually have something. Oh, and then we need to parse it. I'm skipping steps all over here. I'm looking at the tutorial and then not following through with what I actually know that we need to do. So we need to send our fake request, parse the actual data. So there's going to be a request.text. Or is it like response text? There it is. And then we'll have our state data in a JSON. We'll have to double check that. Let's do something like console log state data, just to see what it outputs in the console. And then we should be able to use state data. Let's make sure to be consistent with that. Let's show the output panel here just to make sure everything's going through. And then yeah, so we are processing our JSON data, which is just like a huge blob, and it doesn't know what to do with it right away. So we put it through like an outside service request, an HTTP request, and then we parse it as it comes back in using as an actual response using JSON. Using JSON.parse. So now we should be able to see all of that state information, hopefully in the console, and then our GeoJSON, our Leafletjs, should be able to pick up on all of the different items and like features and things they have in our static resource, all of this stuff, and start to draw some stuff with it. So let's move this over here. Close this out. Refresh the page, open up our inspector. Let's do this. And we've got a fatal error in our JSON position, and I'm assuming that's at the end. And you know what this is? Can any of you guess what that is? And this is the beauty of working with having your static resource inside of your editor itself. So that, since this was originally a JavaScript value, let's move this to JSON. Since this was originally a JavaScript file, there's this extra semicolon at the end there, because that's how you end a string in Java. Oh, so to fix that, I'm going to remove that semicolon to make it a JSON object, and then I'm just going to deploy directly to this. And that deployment should take care of, it's going to go ahead and update our static resource and push our values through. Let's cross our fingers. We are now seeing an outline in here, and here is our JSON parsed object with our 52 features that we can drill down into, and it's exactly what we have in our other section in our static resource. So there you have it. We're able to now outline the United States based on the information, following the tutorial, seeing the information that they provided us, which is really awesome, as we go along. The next thing that we need to do, let's see, in the tutorial it says we're going to add some color, which is all fine and dandy with me. Once we get the colors in, it starts to look really cool. So let's open up some space here because it wants us to add in a function to get colors based on the density, and we'll kind of go over that, what all of that means. I'm looking through the tutorial to see, because do we mess with the density just yet? It's looping over everything. Okay, yeah, we'll get there. There we go. Okay, so I have copied their get colors function, but we're gonna need to change some of this because since the data that we're using, which is the density, or which is most likely gonna be states positive, if they're positive in COVID-19, we know that our scale is way different than these colors on here. So if you're over, 50,000, this is probably like a deep red. So let's do that, and then let's do 2,500, 10,000, 5,000, 2,000, let's do 500 here, and then 100 at the end. So this is going to dictate the colors of our different states, depending on how bad it is, we'll say, how many positive cases that they have. And then they also want us to update some styles for the actual cells themselves. So they do like some dotted lines, some dashes, and a white outline. And the one thing I want to point out here is that we're using feature properties density. And when we look at our state resource, this is currently what it's reading from. So it loads in the state resource, and here I'll add in the next piece really quickly so that we can see that. And this is called my map. So when we use this GeoJSON, we're going to load in our state data. And we're going to put every single one is going to go through the style function, which will change all the styles. And it's going to call the features properties density. Well, our state data is based on our static resource, and that is this JSON file here. And the density right now is pre-populated at a certain number. So when we load all of this up, save this, and deploy it, it actually, it's going to be reading the old data, even though we've changed our information in here. So it's going to look off. All of them are probably going to be the same color because the density is all the same. Excuse me, because the density is all the same for certain ones. Oh, we actually have some different densities, but we're seeing some colors in here, which is good. But the information that we're using is off because they're using a static property to look at this information, and we want to use our COVID-19 info in here. So we've got to do a couple more things to set this up properly to not look at this density here or to change that density field. So what we need to do is find a way of grabbing the information that we have inside of Salesforce and putting it inside of our our Lightning Web component. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can use a wire, the wire methods. I think there's imperative methods. I think that's what we're actually going to use. I got to get the naming down, but we are going to use basically we're going to use some Apex to query the system and grab all of the information that we need and put it out in a format that we want it to be in. So for that, I'm going to press Control-Shift-P, and I'm going to create a new Apex class. I'm going to call this heatmap string. And once then, everything will be in the description down below. So some information on calling Lightning Web Components from Apex and sending the information over and how all of that works. And it's all the regular documentation. It's not like I'm doing anything special here. Okay, so to do this, we have to aura enable our method, and then I will change. I guess I'll put cacheable. Where is cache? Is it cacheable equals true? And then our method name, let's do get COVID state. And I think I want to return this in a map function because we will, or return this in a map type because we will need that a little bit later as we go ahead and start to manipulate our data. So we don't need to have any input parameters, but we will need to change this to a map of strings, COVID states, and close that. All right, and then what we want to do here is do a query of all of our COVID states. So we don't need to exclude anything because the ones that we currently have are the names that we need. You know, it's all the US states. We don't need to exclude any of them. So we need to get the name. Let's use positive to start from. Let's make sure to have that all capital. And the object is called COVID state. Cool. Now let's actually return a map around this. So map string COVID states. Is it states or states? You guys should know, right? And let's call this COVID map, maybe. Right. So if you're looking at this, this will return a list, and we want it to be a map of strings. And this map of strings, you know, when we actually think about this, this will be the IDs. So we are going to do map of string COVID state and surround this. I forgot what this is called specifically, but it's just a shorthand. New map. It's just a shorthand way of converting whatever objects you're getting into the system. It'll put the ID as the key and the entire object as the object that is related to it. So that works out really well. Now we need to sort these by states, because when we request them in JavaScript, we want to do something like, I'm looking for this specific state. Here's my state key, because, you know, when we look at our static resource, we have stuff like the state name. We don't have the Salesforce ID. So there's no way of saying here, give for this Salesforce ID, which is currently what we have. You know, if we return this, what we currently have is our Salesforce ID, and we have our Salesforce ID and the objects behind that. But what we want is the name of our state and then the object behind it. So let's undo this. And then let's loop over all of our COVID states that we have. So this is I keep messing that one up. You guys make me nervous. Let's just call this state. And we're going to do the shorthand here, COVID map.values. And then in here, we're going to, well, since we're looping over everything, let's kind of like, so we get a new return value going. Actually, yeah, what are we doing here? We can do this. What are we? So we have a blank one, and then we'll just put all of this in here. So same principles apply, where we're putting the state name and the state object itself. We're just skipping a step, or not really skipping a step, but we're not initializing this with the values in it. We're looping over them here, and then we're just returning the values. Return COVID map. Cool. So this should get all of our COVID-19 states and return a map where the key is the name of the object, and we have all the rest of the COVID state information in there. So I'm going to deploy this, and now we should be able to use this inside of our JavaScript, because once again, the whole reason behind this is right now all of these values are statically hard coded in here as like density 5.6 or something like that, 55. But what we want to do is go into our state map values, or our COVID states, get the value that exists in there. So for positive, this 300K for New York, and we'll have a different problem with that. This 300K for New York, and put that, run that through the filters and all of the styling so that it looks correct, and we're starting to see all of the coloring come to life when we talk about a heat map. Cool. So now continuing on, what we need to do, just because we created the method or the class in here, we need to actually be able to use it and call that information from the Apex class, because it's not just, it doesn't just know about it automatically, or else, you know, there's security problems all over the place if we could just call any class without importing it and getting access to it. So we're going to import, we're going to call this get COVID states from, and if you haven't seen this yet, it is at Salesforce/Apex, and then the name of your class. I wonder if capital case matters here. Heatmap stream, and then the method call. So I think ours was, what was ours? Oh, I messed up somewhere. Let's check that out. What does this mean? Somebody tell me what this means. Let me guess. It's COVID states. S. And typo. It's a good thing that one got that one. Looking silly. COVID states. Why did I put an S on there? That's bad object creation on my part. All right, what's going on now? Where? States S. Did I not just do this? Oh, I did some other ones. Deploy that. I'm looking silly out here. Okay, cool. So that is now deployed. We now have this method inside of our we can now access that method inside of our Lightning Web Component, so that works out great. So now, just because we can access it, doesn't mean it's all going to work, you know. So now we need to do some setup to actually call it properly and you know, get the values out of there. So what this means for us is that, or what this actually gives us the ability to do is do things like get COVID states, like this will actually return something, you know. But let's see, let's try it. Might be running out of time, but well, let's see what this returns, just for fun. Ooh, it's not gonna do it. I may have to turn it into a promise. All right, is this about right? Yeah. No, we'll go ahead and go forward with the rest of it. You can console log out the whole thing, but I need to remember how to do the rest of it. So what we need to do now is make sure that we are accessing our data correctly. And I guess I do want to show you guys how that process works. So what I'm doing on the other screen is Apex call. And I'm going to the developer docs, and let's see if they have the callouts really quick. So this is pretty much the same thing that I was following here, and I want to see when we're calling it. I guess we can do something like that, but there's another way. There is another way. We could wire the full thing up. You know what? Let's wire the full thing up. Why not? Just so you guys can see the difference of why we have to do it the next way that we do it. So I copied all of that. What I did here is in the wire callout, I'm going to go ahead. Well, we need to import wire as well, and we're using that. Save that, and even though this is called contact data, it's really just getting our data and shoving it into there. So what I want to show is console.log contacts, so you guys can see the info. It's contacts, deploy, and now when our log runs, we should see that. I'm going to take out this log here because it's not that cumbersome. Let's go ahead and go back. Where the heck is that? Nope. Where did I put our, here it is. There it is. I put it on the other page by habit. Where is my inspector? It's F12. It's somewhere else. It's somewhere around here. Where's my Chrome tab? All right, let's refresh and try to get it back up. There we go. And none of it loaded because we didn't have it up the first time. But it looked like it worked out. So this is the data here. Oh no. Yeah, these are our COVID states. So here we go. Like all of our information is loading in now. We have, the name, if it's positive, and the ID, and that's perfect because what we want to do is, inject inside of the state data. We want to put some of our, right now it's called contact data, but we want to put, some of the data that we're getting from our actual code itself. So to do that, we would do something like this, right? We would need to, or at least this is the way that I found how to do it. There may be some other ways, using some fancy JavaScript or a different way of injecting the properties. But what I found is that it's pretty easy to do is just loop over all of the different state features because we have our state JSON here. And then as we loop over them, just inject a new value into the density. So instead of being whatever it originally was, just put our positive value so we don't have to change that much. And this isn't like ready to go production code. There's a lot to change with this, so just be mindful of that. Like I would change the property names and all of this other stuff, but for the most part you guys should get the idea of how this works. So what I'm going to do is loop over the state data that we have. So let's call this state. I guess let's call it state, yeah. Let's call it state D, just because I want the names to be kind of clear. So I guess if I wanted the names to be clear, this would be state data JSON. This would also be state data JSON. This would be state data, and then this would be state data JSON again. Okay, so we're looping over all of the JSON that we have. And each one of those, just like in the Salesforce enhanced for loop, we can call one of the different items that exist inside there. So now that we are looping over each of those different items, we can do something like getting the name of the JSON that we have. So getting this name out. And once we get that name out, we can use the key inside of our COVID-19 states, all of these different keys here, to grab the information that we're looking for, which is positive. And this is instead of looping over all of them and searching for them one by one, which just takes more time, but it is also a viable way of getting this done. Doesn't mean it's the best way. So when we say something like let state equal what is this called? We're calling this context, but we actually need to call this states. And so we're going to look inside the states. Now we're setting our data here. We're looking inside this states value, and we're going to ask for the correct key behind it. So we're going to do something like states. And then when we look at the states, the JSON that we're working with here, the individual object, we'll do like properties.name. So we're going into our static resource. We're saying we're actually on each individual feature because that's where we start out. I think that's where we'll probably need to do features here. Feature, is it features or features? Features, most likely. For each of the features, we're going into them, and then we're getting the name state property in here. So these are all the features. We're looping over them one by one, and then we're going into the properties and getting the name out of it. Once we do that, we need to then set the density based on what we find. So state data, which is the actual JSON itself, properties dot density, and then we're going to set that to whatever the state, because this is now, once we do this selection, this is now a Salesforce object. So even in here, let's make it super clear. We are now using this key, AK, to select an individual state inside of our states map. This is now the Salesforce object itself. So now we can do things like call the Salesforce fields, right? I think, let me go back to the tutorial. I think that is it for changing the density, at least for right now. We have to change this back in a second, but I think that's all we need to change the density of each of these. Or right now we're changing all of them to the same one, but we'll change them all to a different one in a second. Did that go through? Yep, successful. Okay. So let's refresh this. Let's go to console SFDX and see. Something is up here. So this is what I was getting at with the way that we were calling those functions. Hey, we are getting an issue with states. Somehow states is not seen when we're looking for this value out here. You know, and this is an inherent problem. Maybe you're thinking, oh, well, we need to add this dot states to call the actual parent level object. Sure, let's try that out. So let's take a look. Refresh again. Ooh, looks like we got another problem. Promise return AK cannot read property AK. And basically what's happening here is that we are unable to read this, this state's object. It doesn't exist right now. But we saw when we loaded it out here, it did load properly and it loaded fine. And let's see if we can actually see the problem in here. And we can. So depending on when we're loading this, the states object hasn't loaded in yet. So just because we're using our promise and the way that we've set up our rendering to be done. So when we look through, there's this initial load. We remember that this features collection is in. Let me bring it up here. This features collection is here. So we can see all of the different items that we have, the 52 items. But then when we look at our debug for all of the different COVID-19 states actual objects that we have inside of Salesforce, that's happening after this call. And this is the call here. We're looking for this here in our process, in our stream, but it doesn't exist yet. That wire function doesn't fire until I won't say way after, but until after the process goes off. So what we need to do is actually move this into our promise. And there's a really, I guess, neat way that I found how to do this. So we can call our function inside of our promise.all, and this is basically saying we want to do all of these things in this specific order and make sure that it all happens, make sure that everything loads properly before anything else happens. So I found a really cool way of getting this value or setting our state values in here. So this is get states. We want to, one of the other things that we can do with this is actually call it as use it as a promise. So we're going to say after all of our state values load, we want to set the results of that into, we're just using a function, we're setting our results into this dot states and equals results. Oop, and this gets a comment here because we're calling these in order. So yeah, basically what this does is says, hey, load in our state values, then load in our script, then load in our style. Then after all of that is done, go ahead and initialize our Leafletjs. But what needs to happen beforehand is this function needs to fire and basically load in our state data to this value up here so that we can use it everywhere. So now as we deploy this, we should be able to see that AK will load in. Let me cross my fingers and hope I remember that all correctly. As this finishes loading here. States data is not defined. States data is not defined. Who's not defined yet? States data. Let me grab that. Oh, you know what? Did I name? No. States data. Let's see what states data is. We've got states data JSON, states data here, states data here. We renamed the whole thing. That's what it is. So yeah. Yeah, this is the property getting set back. Okay, ready to deploy. We just renamed that, and I'm renaming on the fly, so of course something's gonna go wrong. So as we refresh this, let's cross our fingers that there's a color. States data is not, where is the last states data? Here's states data JSON. This is the states data property. So all of that should be good. Let's try to refresh. Maybe it didn't take it. Promise return failed. States data is not defined. States up here. Get the results. That's fine. Errors up there. We have our JSON request, which is working. This is the only states data call we have. Wait, is this states again? I think it is. Yeah, that's supposed to be this states. What am I missing here? This would call the individual state itself. Let's actually comment this out. Let's do some debugging and do console log state. So technically all of the states are supposed to print out after this. We have parsed our data, right? This is the JSON. We are looping over them. These are the features. Let's check it out. So we are getting through everything here. Yeah, with all of these loading, that means that we are getting through all of this. So what else? Oh, I hate myself. I literally hate myself. Look at that down here. Okay. We don't need, do we need this many add to maps? I think we're just updating our original one, which means we just need this one. And let's leave this one here because those functions will get pulled to the top because that's how JavaScript works. Deploy this. Oh wait, we missed our styles, didn't we? Let's pull this one to the top. Move this to state data. Move this back to here to positive. Deploy. Now it's going to work. 100%. No questions asked. Don't even gotta look. It didn't even reload. Oh, looks like my camera's bugged out. Just can't see my beautiful face. But that worked. That looks really good. I was like doing all these hand movements and stuff. And whatever. You guys missed it. Better luck next time. Tune in next time. I'll do them again. Okay, so we have all of our states loading in here, which is superb. Well, not all of our states in, but we are able to load in from a specific value the density that we have. So if you notice that I put in the key AK, and when we look at our static resources, we have things like the full name Alabama, Alaska, and all of the other millions of states that we have that I don't know the actual names of. So one of the things we can do, since we have access to the static resource, is actually change these. So I have no idea what Alabama is. It's probably AL. I could save this, upload it, and it would work. But as we go along, I want to. Oh, you know what it is? I hear my camera dropping out. So I'll just take that off right now. Did a little sound. So as we go along, let's go ahead and because it's been a pain in my butt. It's been biting me in the butt because I don't have the full names of the states. So let's go ahead and update our states with a new field that has the names on it, because that would be really helpful. These abbreviations suck, and I keep getting them wrong all the time. So I'm going to go to my COVID states object, add in a new field. Let's make this a text type. Let's call this full name. Sure. 255. Why not? We got that. We got the space. Let's make this unique. Set it as an external ID, and we might be able to update by external ID. Let's try that out real quick. Save that. Do a save here. So now we have that field. Oh, we wouldn't be able to update by external ID because it's not in yet. Okay. So now what I want to do is get the data loader going and export these COVID-19 states, and do a quick upload of the IDs so that we can fill that field in. So all we need is the ID. Here we go here, and then these are the state names, so that's what we'll be able to match on. Let's go ahead and run. And as always, because we're about to use a document that you all have never seen before, but as always, go ahead and the description will have all of that stuff in there. So everything that I use will be in the description. Let me load up Excel. And then if you already saw, you may have gotten a sneak preview, there is this state data sheet. So I just downloaded a really quick one, and I'm just going to do a VLOOKUP to match the state code to the Salesforce ID. And what I could actually do, I don't even have to do any matching if I just sort this. So what I'm going to do here is actually, I don't know what you're saying there. If I think select these two rows, do filter, sort A to Z, these should already be in the correct format that I need, and I won't even have to do anything special. Let's paste that in there. What? Okay. Can I sort here? Ooh, but we got the states in. So let's select these, do another filter, sort here A to Z. Okay, these look right. Kinda. We have more. We have more. Okay. What is this? Guam? Get Guam out of here. What is this? All right, we're gonna have to go through these one by one. What is AS? American Samoa, maybe? And these are all moving up. Cool beans. I may have just needed to do that VLOOKUP instead. Just throw this out here. So we got HI. Oh no, HI. There we go. This needs to be under. So let me start to let's start to pull these up. That VLOOKUP seeming pretty nice right about now. All right, we got another mix up here. Oh, where is it? It happens here, here. MP, I don't know what that is. And there's still two more just hanging out. You can see it already. PR is probably Puerto Rico. And then there's one more that's messed up. VI, don't know what that is. Virgin Islands? US Virgin Islands. I'm doing good. All right, so let's go ahead and delete all of these random ones that we don't have. I'm not saying that they're random, but we don't have inside of our system. These all look good here, so I'm gonna go ahead and delete these. Delete this column, call this an ID, and then I'm going to export this, download as CSV. Cool. And now I'm going to go to my trusty data loader. If you haven't checked it out already, I have a video on how to install the data loader. So I'm actually running an old version here, but you can, check, probably not the description, but check the sidebar, check the channel, and you will see a video on how to download the data loader, because it's a little crazy now, and I think we're doing some uploads there as well. So browsing my COVID states, let's go to this sheet that we just downloaded. 51 files, that looks good. So now we need to match up the full name with the state, because state, full name, and that's all we need. We don't care about anything else. Let's run this. It's on my D drive. That's my really old drive there. Yes, I want to continue. Ooh, I've got bat size set to 1. I was probably doing some wonky uploads. Come on, show me the success. Cool. So now if I go back to, I guess I could go to this report. Let's check it out and add in, it's called full name. There we go, CA, California, all of this good stuff. So the reason we did all of this, when we go back into here, instead of changing these values to AL or whatever, we can now just, I just closed it. Can we do Control-Shift-T? Oh, that's great. We can just call our property here as our key value, but okay, let's go ahead and run this, and I will, it's not going to work, and I will go rely. And it might actually give us a huge fat error. Let's check it out. And we're almost done here. I know for you guys that have stuck around this long, we are getting to the end. This is one of the final pieces that we need to get this done. As I refresh this, let's see if we get an error. And yeah, nothing's showing up. It's undefined. And basically because this, the values that we're looking for, the keys are not the same. When we return this here, it's the name, but we actually need to return the full name. It's full underscore name. And that's what we need to return instead of the name. We don't need a match on the name. Full name will be our new key, and we're returning the state object. So let's deploy this. Let's go back over here. We're going based on the properties, so that's great. If we refresh, we're still getting undefined. What's going on here? State data, property.name, this. So we got them here. This is our values here. Positive cannot be read for undefined. Positive cannot be read for undefined. We have the values. You know what we need to do? We need to do a check to make sure we find something, because it's probably erroring out there. So let's do if state, meaning that we actually find something, because we're getting to this section, but it's erroring out at other pieces. If we find the state, set it, because it's probably setting it for other items that it's not finding values for, or something like that. Let's try that. If we find the state, set it. If we don't find the state, then do nothing. Send that through. And this episode was jam-packed. There you go. We're doing data loads. We are finishing our heat map. We are creating new fields. This is going on lightning layouts. So this is pretty good. Cool. So now we have all of our states colored correctly. This is great. And we could easily end it here. But what I want to show, and when I show, there's a little bit more interactiveness that we get when we look at the one that we have in the example, which we'll be able to do pretty easily. So when we're clicking, it's zooming in on the map, and then we have this hover information and this legend, which may be a little messed up. Might be on my side. Okie dokie. So and all that really is just continuing to add functions on top of our Leafletjs. It makes it really simple to add these values in. So I'm scrolling down here in my tutorial. We have that set up. What they want us to do now is start to add those additional features in. So I've just got these functions. I'm copy pasting them right in here. So this one is for highlighting when we hover over them. This one is for when we are not hovering over them, to move the information out. And then we also need to add one to set the boundaries when we click on something. So that will work out there. And then we need to put all of this together in a function that we have here. So this for each function. What we're going to do is, there's some noise out there. Basically, what we're going to say, for each of our features, we want to execute, on the mouse over, we want to highlight. On the mouse out, we want to reset. What is that sound? And on click, we want to zoom in. Okay, so now that we have all of the functions set up, what we actually need to do is manipulate this map, this L, which is the leaflet function, but we need to manipulate the leaflet a little bit more to give us some functionality on top of our map itself. So what we need to do is convert our we need to kind of separate our variables and our GeoJSON so that we can do some additional functions on top of it. So what they recommend doing is adding a variable at the top, calling it GeoJSON, which is fine. We'll just add that in there. And then setting that to the map or the GeoJSON that we're using. So like this. Next up, we need to actually start to interact with the map, similar to how we have the style in here. We can also call our function for on each feature. There you go. And for on each feature, we need to call the on each feature function. So this is an internal function, and anytime that on each feature is triggered, we need to then call our function down here, which then sets all of these different items for the layer. And this loads in every time the map loads up. So some interesting JavaScript stuff there. I'm not as well versed in it, but it is some really cool stuff. And you don't have to do like pass in the layer values or anything like that, because JavaScript is weird. Why would you have to do that? Cool. So now if we go back here, let's cross our fingers that I did this right and I remembered it properly, because there is some setup or some struggles that I went through doing it originally. And now when we hover over, it's lighting up. There we go. And we know that the move out is working, because if it was not, then these would stay highlighted the entire time. If I click on it, no, the click didn't work. Yeah, so this is what I was struggling with when I was testing out all of this stuff. And I know what the on-click problem is. The on-click problem is, do I know what the on-click problem is? So that was the zoom feature, on-click, map.fitBounds, and my map is called my map. It's not called map, which I may need to change that. You know, it may be simpler just doing map. In the first tutorial, they called it my map, so that's what I called it. I'm going to save that, or refresh. I'm going to save and then refresh, so let's check that out. And now I'm hovering, it looks good. And when I click, it zooms in to fit that, that particular one. So that is awesome. We can do this on Alaska. We can do this on Hawaii, wherever it is down here. So that is perfect. So now the last things that we need to do is start to add some styling onto our map, and very similar to what we were just doing. The rest of this is just copying and pasting. So we're adding a var.info control at the top right next to this. And what this is going to do is it's going to put in, let's do some comments. Information div at top right. And then let's copy this again, just to section them off so we know what's going on. And you can kind of put this anywhere, but I might as well let me just put it at the top here. So we added a new function, or two new functions actually. One to create the div and change the div information, and the other one looks like it's going to control the information that we're seeing. So that information that we have on there, we're going to say that this is not, this is actually infected people, positive cases, and I don't need this. Don't know what that is, but our density is now positive cases. You know, when we talk about props and props name and props density, that's the name of our state, and the positive count, which is what we set it to. Now that we have that in, we can go back down to our, I think it's highlight features, and we can add in to update the layers on highlight. So we'll do something like this. We're going to call our info.update so that we can, you know, whenever we hover over or mouse over our feature, it's going to show something very specific. And then once we leave it, we need to also reset our features. So I think these might need to be at the bottom just in case. Why not? Order of operations. So let's, is that what, was that it? Let me see. Nope, they want some CSS as well. So I'm gonna copy those in, drop them in, paste to Roni. Cool, so while that is loading up, it's been pretty, I say simple so far, after we had, you know, figured out that one issue with getting the correct states in. Let's see if we can finish this out. No, inner HTML property. What's going on here? Cannot set property inner HTML. Did I set this to the correct area? and this is Okay, I know, yeah, we got an error. Hold on, let me see if I can figure this out. Cannot set property inner HTML. This.div. This is probably the only inner HTML call. It may be because reading through this, we're setting the controls. I feel like I got this to work, but I may need to check on it, to double check on it, that is. Because, not getting much there as well. I'm wondering if it's out of sync with what's going on with when it triggers. So right now I'm looking through the documentation. I don't know if this should be at the top or the bottom. Because would it know? We want the layer to be known at the different sections of it. I'm scrolling through the docs. You gotta bear with me here as I try to. If we do the reset, there's an update there, and then there's going to be one afterwards with the layer that features our property. Oop, wrong tab. And this one is running long. How long am I going for? All right, I'll give it another 15 minutes. Let's try to figure this out. This is literally the last one of the last things that's on here. We may need to do a different query selection, but I feel like this was working. I feel like I didn't have to. I may need to look at my old code, but let's take this out. Move this to maybe the top. So I don't remember where I put it, but we should have infos.update. And we know we're getting this far because now it's saying that inner HTML, it looks like on the first pass, method that will use to update the controls based on the features property. Now let's deploy this. I'm reading through here. We might have to wait, did we even add this to the map itself? Ugh. That's what it is. Okay. Because we need to add the info to the map. Do something like this. And this should be my map. Okay. Nah, I think that's what it is. Because once we do this info.add to my map, we're going to put all of these elements on there. That's why I can't find the inner HTML, because it doesn't exist yet. Let's cross our fingers. What is this? Control corners? Doesn't exist. Has my map has not been initialized yet. We're doing this stuff too high. So, I mean, we could just put it under it, but let me make sure. Let's leave this here, move this up. Oh, I did paste that in, okay. Deploy this. And let's cross our fingers, working with JavaScript. I'm probably going to take a couple LWC courses and stuff like that to get a little bit better versed. And now we are seeing US density population, which is not right, but main, we've got 2,109 positive cases, which is exactly what we want to see. When we hover over the rest of these, the number is changing in the top right corner here. And we can see that once we move out of it, it doesn't update to the newest number, and that is because we did not set the final update on the outbound. So let's go ahead and set that info update here, save that, and then finish out with the legend himself. So more copy pasting, we're adding a new control, and I guess all of those little widgets are controls for Leafletjs. Adding in the legend, saying that's going to be in the bottom right position, and then let's copy this. Legend div at the bottom right. Just giving it some of its own space. Cool, and we have another function that we need to add. So I'm just gonna drop all of that in there, and then we have another add to map too that we need to drop in. And then we had to change these to match what we had in our colors. So these colors here, let's do, I think there's another 0 in there. And then 25000. And we've got 000, 5000, 2000, 500, and then 10, and then 0, right? So then let's save that. I think we've added it to the map, so we don't have to go through that frustrating problem again. We can refresh this. Cross your fingers. You can't see my face. I'm like crossing my fingers and doing all this other stuff. Ugh. We forgot to rename map to my map or whatever. Okay, deploy. Clap my hands. Come on. Show me the money. Cool, that looks great. Refresh here. And I think that's it. Come on, give me it. Give me the goods. Show me what we got. There we go. We've got our legend. It is not calling our function. It's not calling our function. These don't match. Oh, you know what? I think they're not showing. We have some CSS updates. Did we add these in? Okay, that's probably what it is. We don't have enough space to show the colors in there. Get out of here. Taking up all my prime real estate. Okay, so this is what they have in theirs. It probably just needs more space to load in, but at the end of the day, it doesn't look, I mean, it does look kind of bad, but we can probably, it's with these dashes is what's killing it, the large numbers. But that's what it is, you know, that's going to take some CSS to get fixed and to work on properly. But overall, we have completed this heat map. You know, this is, we've taken our Salesforce data from the COVID-19 states object, and now we're able to visualize it inside of this Leafletjs using our brand new, Lightning Web Component skills, which is awesome. I'm kind of mad that the CSS is off, but I think I'm gonna have to deal with it for right now. Yeah, it's going to just be a little bit of work. The same thing like we changed US population to positive counts of COVID-19 or something like that. So there's a little bit of polish that I'll probably do offline with this, but overall we're able to select our information through the class that we're using. We are able to, we're selecting our information, bringing from Salesforce using Lightning Web Components and an Apex controller. bringing that information inside of Salesforce, which is really great. And then we're then parsing that information, putting it inside Leafletjs, and displaying it here in a final heat map. So I would like to thank, who would I like to thank? I forgot your name, but there's somebody who kind of inspired this heat map and asked for it. So I'll probably tag you down below and say, thanks for pushing me to get this done. It was a really big learning opportunity for me, so that was really great. For those of you that have made it this far, do make other recommendations for either updates to the COVID-19 tracker or any particular code that anything that you'd like me to see make. It may take me a little while to either figure it out or get it done if I don't know it off the top of my head, but we can always work together and get that done. So as always, everybody, make sure to like and subscribe, especially if you got this far. It means you've hopefully followed through this entire process, and now you can build this heat map and you know a little bit more about Lightning Web Components, development, Apex, whatever I helped you with. If I actually helped you, go ahead and like and subscribe if you like this content. And I'm Walters954. Remember, if I can do it, you can do it. So I believe in you.